Welcome back to the Middle of Culture. I am one of your co-hosts, Peter.
And I'm your other co-host. I'm your other co-host, Eden. I was going to make a joke about how, I'm one of your other co-hosts, but our other co-host isn't here today. But then I trembled and stumbled all over my words. Yeah, but no, our father is not here this time.
He is not. And, you know, he would not be able to participate in our conversation. I have in kind of a highlight, an allusion, a foreshadowing of what we're going to talk about today. Have you ever tried to play a video game with our father?
Not since I was a child, trying to get him to play Moon Patrol with me on the Atari 5200, so no.
So at one point, he was out visiting us in New Hampshire, and he said to me, he's like, I want to know what this Halos is about. And I'm like, the Halos, Dad? You want to play the Halos? He's like, yeah, I want to play the Halos. And I'm like, okay. So I pulled out Halo 3 and we fired it up in co-op and we start running. And I swear, like 5 seconds, I'm like, where's my dad? I'm like, I'm running solo here. And I turn around and I go back and he has run like the first 10 feet and then you have to jump to go up.
Sure. Yeah.
And he is standing in front of where you have to jump and he is looking up and then he's looking down and then he's looking up and then he's looking down and then he's looking up and then he's looking down and he cannot jump. He can't figure it out. I'm like, Dad, push the button, push the A button. I'm like, just push A. And he's like, what? And then he was like, this is dumb. I can't do this. And he turned it off and walked away. So,
yeah,
you know, that was my experience. So I don't think he would be I don't think he'd be participating in our conversation for later today. But hey, how the heck have you been, Eden?
You know, I've been pretty okay. It's December. We're slowly but surely getting used to the weather change, the time change. Pretty soon, the sun will start coming up earlier and going down later, which thank God that'll happen soon because it gets dark so early.
Yeah.
I just can't handle it.
Yeah.
Anyway, how are you?
Hanging in there. As I mentioned to you before we started recording, I'm fairly certain that the sickness I had a couple weeks ago that we talked about, in looking back in retrospect, I think it's almost certainly was a variant of COVID, because I am absolutely, utterly fatigued and exhausted all the time, no matter how well I sleep, no matter how much sleep I get. But hey, that's all good. We're making it and getting through things and looking forward to a little time off the first week of January. So that'll be nice.
Do you have any plans for how you're going to spend that time off? Or
Nope, I don't. Honestly, my office manager basically went through and just picked 6 weeks for me to take off because I'm really bad at taking my vacation time. And so she went through and just for the next year penciled in 6 weeks for me, looking at times where she knew that my wife was off or things like that. And so I have this week off the first week of January, and I don't know, I'm just going to take it easy and enjoy not having to go to work.
Well, you know, kudos to your office manager for facilitating that for you.
As is often the case, she's much better at helping take care of me than I am at taking care of myself. So, you know, it's all good.
There you go.
But what you been into lately? Anything you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I got a couple things I want to mention. First off, I went and saw Godzilla -1, and you will hopefully be hearing about that next episode, listeners. It was a lot, and I want to talk with Peter about it, so I'm going to make him go see it as soon as he's off call.
That's the plan.
But in terms of other stuff that I have been checking out lately, I'll mention just one game off the top, or just really quickly that I tried again, and at one point played a lot of, but I tried it again and I bounced right off of it. Did you ever play Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning?
Yes. In fact, I have played it twice.
I mean, I played it a lot. According to my Steam library, I played that thing for like 76 hours, which is a lot of time to play a game.
That's a lot. That's like more than playing through the whole story.
I think I maybe played it twice when I, first played it back in 2013, 2014. I think it was maybe even 2013 because I think it was at our old house. So, I had, in a recent Humble Bundle, I guess because we can't just be normal about things, they had to re-release it and call it Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning. And I was like, I remember liking that game. Maybe I'll give it a try again. So I installed Re-Reckoning. First off, I can't tell what they did. The menus still look like 2009 dog shit. So I don't know,
they kind of do.
You still have to like click enter to equip I can't just use my mouse button? Like, you didn't change anything about this game 15 years ago? And
I think they claim to have remastered something like that. I don't know.
They're lying. It looked like a game from 2009. It played like a game from 2009. And I guess 2023 Eden is not into that because I made it about 15, 20 minutes in. And then I was like, you know what? I'm good. I'm good, actually. So I uninstalled it.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. I remember really liking it. And then I was really bored by it immediately. And I was just like, I'm good. The other things
I wasn't immediately bored by it when I replayed it. And it was a couple years ago. It was when the Re-Reckoning version came out. But
yeah, it was like a couple years ago.
But yeah, it was definitely, I don't know. Here's the thing, listener. One of the things that drew me to it is that the story supposedly was written by Bob Salvatore. Now, Bob Salvatore is... if you're into the D&D books, he's kind of well known, and he's carved out a little niche for himself in fantasy literature, having written a metric shit ton of books about one dark elf, Drizzt Do'Urden, and then he's written some stuff in his own, and I've liked some of his stuff, though I haven't really read much in the last little while. But so we have this well-known fantasy author who they were touting, a deep, rich story in an engaging world written by R.A. Salvatore and blah, blah, blah. And
Dog, that ain't there.
It's not a great story. There ain't much to it, unless I really missed something.
It sure feels like they maybe had him come into the office for an afternoon and write them 5 pages, 6 pages, and they were like, I guess that's enough to make a game.
See, you're giving him more credit than me. I'm like, this is like somebody met him in a bar and he gave them the napkin at the end and was like, here's a couple ideas for you.
Yeah. It's, I remember really liking it. I remember at least there was like a chakrams weapon that I remember really liking.
Yeah. I used those the last time I played. Enjoyed those.
I didn't even make it long enough to get those unlocked in this playthrough before I was just like, you know what? I could go play any number of other newer, better games. So I stopped immediately. So sorry to you, Big Idea Studios or whatever, that only game that they ever made and was supposed to be like a proof of concept for an MMO that never happened. But hey, whatever, man.
It never happened because they owed the state of Rhode Island way too much money.
Well, that's what you get. You play tax games, you win tax prizes.
Right?
All right. The only other thing I want to mention a couple comics I've read in the last couple of weeks that I think are worth mentioning. Were you a Walking Dead person, Peter? Did you ever watch the show? Did you ever read the comics?
Nope. I have never watched it. I never read it.
Did you ever play those Telltale games?
I haven't even played the Telltale game. Nope.
Well, there you go. You know what? I don't think you're missing much. I think that they're mostly bad. And I think that the fans of them are about the most insufferable people alive. Mm-hmm. But that's neither here nor there. Why I bring it up is because the main character of the Telltale series is a young girl named Clementine. Mm-hmm. And she's a side character in the first one because you play as Lee and he like takes Clementine in and he's like, I guess I'm going to raise Clementine. And then he dies at the end of the fucking game because whatever. It's a Telltale game. You got to tug at the heartstrings because we're not tugging at the gameplay strings because you can't play these games because they're garbage and our engine is falling apart at the seams even back then. Whatever. Clementine is kind of the POV character for the rest of those Telltale games. And so you see her grow up. Whatever. I haven't played them. I played the first season, that the one where Lee is and he dies at the end, and I was like, whatever. Mm-hmm. But the last couple of years, they have had some original graphic novels come out that are continuations of Clementine's story. And I'm like, I wouldn't care about this, except for one thing. They're written and illustrated by Tilly Walden. Have you ever heard of Tilly Walden, Peter?
I have not.
Tilly Walden is incredible. Tilly Walden is one of the most productive comics artists I've ever heard of who can create such good art at such a speed. She's incredible. Her book, On a Sunbeam, is easily in my top 10 comics of all time, potentially in my top 5. So this is the level of person we're talking about. Like, one of her books is one of the greatest comics I've ever read in my life. And listeners, as you all know, I've read a lot of comics. I'm literally a doctor in it. And she still clears top 5, or top 10 for sure, maybe top 5. So they hired her to do these Clementine Walking Dead tie-in graphic novels, which I thought was a really weird thing. But then I had to read them. I had to know. I had to know if they were any good. Sure. And listener, I am happy to report to you that they're the 2 worst books that Tilly Walden's ever made, which means that they're still better than 90% of the shit you'd be reading instead. They are the weakest books of hers I've ever read. They're still really good comics. And, you know, it's just about a teen girl trying to survive in a post-apocalyptic zombie world and getting tied up with other teens and maybe finding love and dealing with the zombie apocalypse. And they were really good. The 3rd book in the trilogy is supposed to come out next summer. And I'm kind of eagerly awaiting it. I'm also eagerly awaiting for her to be out of this contract so she can make something much better that's not tied into The Walking Dead. Mm-hmm. But still, I'm not kidding where I'm like, they're some of the better books I've read this entire year, while also being the worst book she's ever done. So that tells you how I hold her books and in what esteem I hold her books.
Yeah, that's impressive.
And then the last thing I'll mention really quickly. Have you seen anything about the DC manga that's come out in the last year or 2?
No.
So DC Comics, you know, Detective Comics, Batman, Superman, those guys are doing much better than Marvel when it comes to reaching out to comics readers who are not the kind of people who go to a comic store. Marvel's doing a shit job of this. They really are. But DC's got a Batman webtoons that you can read on webtoons along with all of your, you know, yaoi Fujo stories. So like you can read your terrible romance and you can also read this Batman on your webtoons for free, scrolling vertically on your phone. Because they're like, this is where comics readers are, so let's bring them a Batman story. But they've done the same thing with manga. And they have 3 different books out. Well, there's 4 books, but one of them is a sequel to the other. So there's like 3 different like series, essentially, that I think they're all going to get sequels. And the first one is like Batman in a mech suit or something, like pretty boilerplate, looked pretty boring. My friend John read it and seemed to really enjoy it, but it seemed kind of boilerplate. But the other 2 are where they get really weird. The one that I read this last week is called Superman versus Meshi. So this is a Meshi book, which I've talked about a couple of times here on the podcast, especially recently because I've read a couple of Meshi books lately. And Meshi means like food or like a feast. And so these are books that focus on food as a core element to the book. So the 2 that I've read recently, Delicious and Dungeon, that book in Japanese is called Dungeon Meshi because that's what it's about. And then the other one would be She Loves to Cook and She Loves to Eat. But this one, Superman versus Meshi, the basic premise of the comic is Superman has realized he has enough time on his lunch break to fly to Japan and eat delicious, delicious food for less than $10 a plate and still make it back before Perry White gets mad at him. And so that's the premise. Every chapter is him like finding an excuse to fly to Japan, eat beautifully rendered food on the page, be so orgasmically pleased with it that his heat vision like goes off because the takoyaki is so good, and then like fly back just in time to be back from lunch. Like, it's really light, it's really stupid, it's just kind of okay. But it wasn't, it was a funny concept for a book of Superman just loves to eat Japanese food, so he flies to Japan for his lunch break. But the one that I haven't read yet, that I just need listeners and you to know exists, I wish I could remember the name of it. But the premise of the book is Joker and Batman fighting in the Acme chemical factory. This time, Joker knocks Batman into the vat of acid. And guess what happens to him, Peter?
What's up?
He gets turned into a baby. And so the Joker does the only logical thing to do. Decide, well, fuck, I guess I need to raise this baby because I need my nemesis back, but he's going to need a dad. So I guess I'm the dad now.
As one
and that is the
does.
That is the premise of the book.
Nice. That sounds unusual.
That sounds stupid. It sounds stupid, but just the right kind of stupid. Again, my friend John also read the 2 Joker volumes that are out so far because its sequel volume is already out, and he said they were delightful. So if you trust a 70-year-old man who's never read manga in his life, he said they were delightful. And he's not the target audience, but he is the audience that I'm glad was targeted by it anyway. But good on DC for making some weird shit. And Marvel, get it together. Do some cool stuff like that. Anyway, what have you been up to, Peter?
Not a whole lot. You know, I've been doing a little writing, as you kind of alluded to. I've been on call for a little while now. And yeah, you know, not a ton. I'm still working on the Wheel of Time. It's starting to pick up for me. I'm getting to the point in book 12 where I think things are really starting to happen, but then I get busy. So like I'll read on the weekend and then I just get busy enough during the week that I don't read much then. No real movies, TV, anything worth talking about there. Haven't really dived into anything new in terms of games, in part because I finally, I'm trying to think, it was Monday night, finally had all the pieces to assemble a new gaming desktop.
Ooh,
and so
exciting.
I put together Monday night, a new gaming PC, and have been installing a lot on it because I'm ridiculous. And some of this isn't going to mean anything for some people who are listening, and some of this might mean stuff to some people who are listening. But we'll let Eden describe the degree of insanity with what I ended up doing here.
Okay.
I have on the motherboard, it came with 3 NVMe M.2 slots. So I have two 2 terabyte NVMe SSDs and a 4 terabyte NVMe SSD on the board.
You have 8 terabytes on your board?
Yeah. And then I have a 4 terabyte SATA SSD. And then, because why not, I have a 20 terabyte spinning hard drive.
Lord in heaven, they make them that big?
Yeah. No, they do.
For consumers. I knew they made them that big for like businesses. I didn't realize the consumer market had gotten to the point where regular suckers were like, I need 20 terabytes.
So I have 32 terabytes of storage.
Christ alive. That's impressive.
With 12 of that being SSDs. And so I've just been basically installing everything I want on it. I have fired up a few games just to see how they go, and it was fun. Yeah. Fired up Diablo 4, and it was like, oh, your first time running, we're going to set everything at ultra. Those are the recommended settings. You okay with that? And I was like, hell yeah, I am. And then I fired up Starfield, and it was like, hey, we're going to set everything on max, ultra, and high because that's the recommended settings based on your hardware. Is that okay with you? And I was like, oh yeah, it is. Fired up Forza Horizon 5, same thing. It was like, the recommended graphic setting for this is extreme. Do you want to keep it there? And I was like, you better believe it. That was the goal in building this PC. Okay. So needless to say,
You told wait. You told us how much memory this bad boy has, and just how much hard drive this has. You got to give me the rest of the stats on this machine.
So I put an AMD Ryzen R7 7800 something in there, which is not the highest. It's not the R9, but it's the R7, and it's a very fast, very good gaming CPU. 64 gigs of DDR5 RAM. And then I'm only pushing a 2560 by 1440 high refresh rate monitor. I'm not pushing 4K or anything. So I only went with a 4070 Ti. Everything I could see basically said that the 4070 Ti is so close in performance to the 4080, but it's like $500 cheaper. So I went with the 4070 Ti. And that's one of the nice things is at only 2560 by 1440, it can easily push everything I've thrown at it at max settings, and I'm still getting frame rates in the hundreds. So that's pretty cool.
That is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Things look really, really nice and very, very smooth, which is cool.
I bet.
We're going to talk about some more games and some of where I've been spending some of my other time, so I'm going to leave the games at that. And then the final thing I will mention is the last week and a half or two have been kind of real big weeks for me in music in terms of funeral doom. I think I've talked before, or at least mentioned my love of funeral doom as a genre. For those who aren't familiar, it's doom metal, very, very slow. And it tends to be very heavy, very slow, usually pretty harsh, almost unintelligible vocals that are oftentimes kind of mixed lower in the mix. And for some reason, it works really well for me. It's great to work to because even though there's vocals, you can't really understand them. And so they're more like a texture layer in the music than actual vocals. It's very good for me to write to because, again, it is much more. Funeral doom is all about creating an atmosphere. And there have been 3 albums that have really been doing it for me. The newest album from Convocation, which I would kind of argue sort of death doom versus funeral doom, but I feel their most recent album, No Dawn for the Colliginous Night, is definitely more on the funeral doom side of things. I happened to, in reading a review for that, stumble across an album from earlier this year by the band Oromet, their self-titled album Oromet. And again, to put things into perspective, it's 3 songs and it's 50 minutes long. So that gives you an idea, again, kind of what you're dealing with funeral doom.
For sure.
Been really, really digging that one. And then the most recent, just this week, the newest album from the funeral doom band Slow was released, Abime 1, and it is classic slow. It is, again, all about the atmosphere, very heavy, very kind of rumbling guitar tone. Again, those vocals that are just super low. And yeah, I've been really digging it, and it's really gotten me back into funeral doom.
Nice.
And been enjoying those. So been getting a lot of funeral doom playtime, and happened to get my Apple Music replay, which once again is absolute garbage compared to Spotify Wrapped. But hey, Apple, you tried. And since I use Apple Music, that's the one I look at. And Bell Witch, with their album that released this year, The Clandestine Gate Part 1, that was apparently Bell Witch was my #1 artist for the year. I listened to over 3,000 minutes of Bell Witch this year.
Wow.
And it didn't surprise me because The Clandestine Gate is a single song and it's 83 minutes long. So, you put that on repeat and you'll start racking up the minutes real quick. But yeah, so. Well, let's dive into our topic for the week. And
indeed, let us do it.
I kind of alluded to this, but we're going to talk about some video games. And I'm going to be very honest and upfront, again, with me feeling pretty crappy the last couple weeks and just exhausted after I got sick. I was kind of looking for something that was a little bit more, kind of a little quicker for us to talk about, something that didn't require a lot of homework, but something that I think hopefully will be a fun conversation. And that is, I thought we could talk about a relatively new ish sort of genre of games that we have talked about some of these before, but they're kind of I've heard them referred to as either reverse bullet hell shooters or bullet heaven shooters. Mm-hmm. So why don't you tell us what is a bullet hell game, Eden?
Yeah. Bullet hell games basically are a type of shoot 'em up game. So you're already starting from a subsection. Shoot 'em up games, or shmups as people like to call them. That's how I love to call them because that's a satisfying word to say.
Very satisfying.
Basically a shmup, the idea is there's a ton of enemies and you are trying to shoot while dodging enemy attacks. That's the way a shmup works. Bullet hell is, what if it was a shmup, but the bad guys were shooting a whole lot of projectiles at the player character? So you have got to be like on top of things. Like you got to really be doing a lot of movement. It takes a lot of careful movement and planning and things like that. So that's what a bullet hell game is. Like you are often in the middle. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say so much planning on those that the people who get very, very good at bullet hell games actually know exactly where the pixels for the hitbox on their thing is. So they'll know how much of this projectile can I let actually touch the sprite, the picture of my ship or whatever it is, without it registering as a hit. That's how precise they have to be.
Yeah, it's really wild.
And they can be really fun.
I think that a lot of them are pretty fun. It's been a long time since I played one. Enter the Gungeon is probably the newest one that I've played with, some frequency. I thought Enter the Gungeon was pretty fun. And, I like them. Closely related are like scrolling shooters, which I've also played a lot of. We played a lot of those when we were kids.
Oh, yeah.
Like Raptor. Do you remember Raptor?
Oh my gosh, one of the first games I repurchased on GOG or Good Old Games
you better
was
believe
Raptor Call of the Shadows.
Call of the Shadows. You better believe I did too. I also have that on my GOG account right now because it's a classic. It's really fun.
It is. It's so fun.
But yeah, so that's bullet hells. I like bullet hells. I'm very bad at them, so I don't play them a lot, but I think that they're really fun as a genre. But you wanted to talk about something different.
I did. And my sort of real introduction to this happened earlier this year, I think it was, with Vampire Survivors. So Vampire Survivors was this game that was showing up on Steam, and it was getting recommended to me. And it was really cheap. I mean, I don't know. I should look and see how much it is.
It's $4.99.
There you go. I knew it was cheap. But it has, that very much kind of old school pixel art sort of look to it. But it was very inexpensive. And you look in there and it's one of these where its ratings on Steam are overwhelmingly positive, which is basically the most positive that they'll give. And a lot of reviews. I mean, we're talking, 200,000 reviews. And it just was getting all this buzz. And I was like, okay, I got to just, again, it's $4.99. Freaking got to try this game. And I tried it and I started it. And the first time I played it, it didn't click for me. And then I played it again and all of a sudden it started to click. And once it started to click, I found myself playing this freaking game so much, just playing it and playing it and playing it. And then I kind of started noticing that based on its popularity, so many other games like this started popping up. So what's the difference here between a bullet heaven and a bullet hell, or again, a reverse bullet hell shooter? The main thing is you're not really getting much enemies coming at you, but instead of an enemy shooting at you, what you're getting is you're getting tons and tons of actual enemies coming at you. I mean, the entire screen is filling up with enemies that are coming at you.
It's almost like a Muso. It can be hundreds of enemies at once, like in a Muso game, except usually these are top down rather than in third person like a Muso is.
And one of the kind of keys to me is these are sort of, they're auto fire games. You're not picking, okay, I'm going to use this weapon here and I'm going to do this here and I'm going to do this here. You know, as opposed to, and again, very, very different genres, but you think about something like Elden Ring or a Dark Souls game, something like that, where you've got to kind of very carefully plan, I'm going to use this weapon and these spells, and I'm going to do this for this enemy, and then I'm going to switch my, you know, you're constantly changing your strategy. In these, you start off with one ability, and then as you're killing enemies, they usually will drop little gems or little things that represent experience. And you pick those up, and then you level up. And when you level up, you'll usually be given a selection of options to choose from, either a new weapon or an improvement to the weapon you already have, or something that maybe buffs your damage or your armor or whatever. And you just pick one of these, and then the game keeps going, and then you level up again, and the game keeps going. And you're becoming more and more powerful. You're getting more weapons, and then you're leveling up your weapons, and so they're getting more powerful as you continue to play, so that as more enemies are coming at you, and as enemies that are stronger are coming at you, you're just running around not thinking about what you're doing, because all of these weapons and abilities are just firing off on their own, and you're just creating havoc on the screen. And a lot of times,
so your biggest motivation as the player is, again, movement, because it's auto firing, and you're like, I need to build I need to have a build that will keep people from touching me. But a lot of what I'm going to be doing is kiting, so that enemies kind of clump together, so that my harder hitting abilities will hit better, things like that.
Yeah. And again, in pretty much all of these that I've played, you'll play through, and it's either a certain amount of time and then it will cut off. There'll be maybe a boss that comes out at some point, and once you defeat that boss, you're done with that, quote, level, that run. And in the midst of this, you're collecting currency. And then in between, you can use that currency to then upgrade abilities, upgrade your health, upgrade your armor, your speed, whatever. And then often there will be certain things where do X, Y, and Z, and then you're unlocking additional characters who play a little differently and those sorts of things. So there's kind of a little bit of aspects of almost like a roguelike in there, where at some point your run is going to end. It's either going to end with you dying, or it's going to end with you beating the boss of that run, and then it stops. And it's not like this is a level, now you're going to the next level. Nope. Now you're kicked back. You're kicked back to usually a selection screen, where now you're going to use that currency. Maybe, some of them, there'll be items. You may equip those items, trade those, whatever. But you're kind of making your character stronger in between these. And then you're going to go and you're going to run again. And a lot of times, again, there will be different kind of tile sets, different environments that you can go and choose from, and different unlocks. And so the idea of these games is, again, you're just playing over and over and over again, but either getting further or, again, unlocking additional characters. And then you unlock a new character. Now you're going to take that character because, again, oftentimes the more you use a character, the more they can get strong and things like that. I don't know. Is that a fair kind of sort of overview of what makes these games tick, do you think?
Yeah, I think that is a really good kind of explanation of what's happening.
So I have really, really started to dig these games. I like them a lot for a few reasons. And I thought we could kind of talk about what we do like, what we don't like, and maybe a few examples of these that we've played that we think stand out. Because I will tell you this, based on the popularity of Vampire Survivors, I think, because again, I think that was really the first big one. Based on the popularity of these games, there are so many, and so many of them are garbage. I mean, these are games that they can make fairly easily and just shit them out pretty quick. And so you go on Steam and you will find literally hundreds of games that are similar to this.
Yeah.
And so then again, I thought we could talk about any that have stuck out to us, or maybe if there's been anything that's kind of risen to the top that we wanted to talk about, we could talk about that. So,
yeah. I mean, I will be perfectly honest. I have played a bit of Vampire Survivors. I think if I looked on my Xbox, I think it was like 14, 15 hours is all. But it scratches a particular itch. I don't think I'm very good at it. But it does, this is a quintessential podcast game. Like, you don't need to be paying attention to the sounds that are going on. You don't need to like pause your podcast because you're like, oh crap, it's a cutscene. I got to actually pay attention to the story. There's no story. There's no story. Yep. Pick whichever character. It's been long enough since I played. I can't think of the character. I pick whichever character has the cool, like, rainbow vertical explosions, and then I try to get some garlic real quick, and I kill things until I die. But
yep.
I think that Vampire Survivors is pretty fun. I can see why it hit the way it did. I also can see that it was one of those games that, like, as I was reading about it, it was like, yes, this game is one of those ones that for whatever reason, it entered the YouTube Let's Play influencer ecosystem. And if you have that happen, that's game over for you. You're now the richest person on earth. That's how you are now great. You're going to, if you want to, 8 years from now, Annapurna is going to release the movie based on your stupid video game if you play your cards right, as soon as you find out that YouTube people are playing your game.
That's true.
And, more power to the guy who started it. Luca Galante is an Italian dude who's the main developer on it. More power to him. I hope he's made a ton of money. I hope he has been very smart with that money, because it'll eventually peter out. It hasn't yet. It had DLC come out this week, for Christ's sake. Yeah. So it certainly hasn't petered out yet, but it will. So I hope he's planning ahead.
Definitely.
But I do think it was very fun. But so in preparation for this podcast, I went onto Steam and I was like, I'm going to just maybe spend $10-15 buying a couple of these and trying them out. And then I looked at them all and I was like, these all look like dog shit. And I didn't buy a single one and didn't try a single one. So you're just going to have to tell me about what you found. Because everyone I looked at, I was just like, I'm good, actually. I think I'm good. And it doesn't help that they're not like super easy to find on Steam, because Bullet Heaven is not one of the tags on Steam, or if it is,
correct. No,
it's not one that's like findable. So I'm looking at the Bullet Hell tag on Steam literally right now. And yes, there's a bunch of these like Vampire Survivors, and this one called, what is the name of this game that looks just like it? Soulstone Survivors, which looks like the same game. And it's
we're going to talk about Soulstone Survivors.
Brotato looks like another one of these. More power to these games, but
I'm going to talk about Brotato too.
All right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you then, because I just look at them and I'm like, it was one of those things. I opened it up, I looked at it, and I thought to myself, I can't do it. I don't care. I don't care about these games enough to.
And that's totally fair.
But tell me about the ones that you like and the ones that you hated.
Let me tell you first why I think I have found these games to really click for me. And as we've talked about it a lot of times, life has been pretty crazy for me. And I am finding it very difficult to have the time that I can set aside to dive into even a 8 to 12 hour narrative focused game, which is really my jam. I really dig games with a strong narrative focus that I can enjoy the story, I can get into the characters, that sort of thing. But I'm having a really hard time finding that. And because these obligately are going to be time limited things, like again, Vampire Survivors is the one that probably lasts the longest. And if you get good, which, I've gotten to the point that I've unlocked enough that almost every time I play Vampire Survivors, I'm going to make it to 30 minutes when the Reaper then comes and you die no matter what. And 30 minutes is sometimes a little bit of a long time for me. But still, it's being able to sit down and play through, honestly, as little as like 6 to 10 minutes and feel like I made some progress. I either unlocked something, a character or a new weapon or ability, or I earned enough currency to level up an ability or two so that the next time I play it, I'm going to be a little bit stronger.
Sure.
And I think that that has been one of the reasons they've really clicked for me.
That makes a lot of sense. For me, if I've got 15 minutes to play a game, I just pop open Genshin and grind out some material so my characters can get stronger.
There you go. And see, I haven't ever played that, so
it's a different thing. You're probably better for having not played it, because you don't need to. You don't need to play the predatory gacha game. You're good, but I do. So
well, I'm glad you have that. But one of the other reasons that I actually really, really enjoy these games is, what these games are perfect for? They're perfect for a handheld gaming device that you can sit on a couch while, I don't know, somebody else is watching a TV show, but I want to be in the room with somebody. Or I can take to my office with me because I know I'm going to have 30 minutes of downtime at some point during the day, and I want to break this out and I want to play a little bit. These all run great on the Steam Deck or the ROG Ally, the Legion Go, any of those things. They play really well with a controller type setup. And because they're not, these big, graphically intense AAA games, they run great on those devices.
And I bet your battery lasts great with them.
Oh, yeah. They're not draining the battery. So again, super, super good to kind of sit down and just play for whatever time you have. And again, it can be as little as, 5 minutes.
Sure.
And so that they're just so well suited for that handheld gaming device that's been another reason I've really enjoyed them. So let me tell you about a few that I've really liked. I don't have a bunch that I haven't really liked because I've tried to be picky.
That makes sense.
And there are some that I've enjoyed more than others, though. So we've kind of talked about Vampire Survivors. Again, I really enjoy it. A pretty good sized roster of characters to unlock, and you can get mutations or these, don't remember what they call them. But where if you have this certain weapon that you got, and then this other thing at some point down the road, you may be able to turn them into something different. And so there is a little bit of depth to, okay, I'm going to pick this in hopes that I get this so that I can turn it into this because that's going to be good for this level or that sort of thing. Brotato's fun. Here's the thing. A bunch of these I got, I'm pretty sure through like either Humble Bundles or I don't know how they showed up in my library for Steam because some of these I didn't pick out personally. Brotato was just there.
I was going to say it must not have been from a humble choice because I don't have these games. But
well, somehow Brotato
they were from some sort of bundle.
So Brotato, one of the things that says, first of all, Brotato, you pick it just looks like a potato. And there's different ones that you start with. And you're just this little weird white lump running around with like a gun floating randomly in the air around you. And it rotates around you either direction because it's firing automatically. And it looks funny. And, it's great. You'll continue to add other guns and weapons. And the next thing you know, you've got a little white lumpy potato running around with like 6 or 8 different weapons circulating around your character.
Nice.
And Brotato, the thing I like about it is it's a very confined space. So in Vampire Survivors, some of those levels are really big. And you'll get a little indicator off the side of the screen that there's something you can go pick up, whether it's a trinket that gives you some ability or something like that. And you can be running towards one of those for like 5 minutes before you get there.
Yeah,
and Brotato,
it's maybe too big.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think we kind of hinted at this when I talked about one of the other games on my list here. Sometimes, again, that 30 minutes is almost too long. Like it starts to feel, it gets to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm kind of bored now. Brotato, much more kind of confined board space to play on. So you're not running around very far. I mean, it's like take the screen of the Steam Deck. It's like 4 of those. So you're not any
very
bigger than
tiny,
that. Very tiny,
very tiny.
Yeah. So Soulstone Survivors, you mentioned that one. The reason I kind of found this one out is, I had my now 14-year-old, I helped him set up a Steam account. And he happened to, I think, because again, so many of these are very inexpensive. He bought this game for himself. And I watched him play it and I was like, well, that looks kind of fun. And the thing, Soulstone Survivors is not, it's a Unity game. It looks like it's made in Unity. It has that Unity graphic style. It is not that pixel art kind of thing like Vampire Survivors is. It's a little bit more of kind of a 3D top-down isometric view. This one's fun just because there's a ton of weapons and abilities, and you'll just get to the point where you're running around and there is just fire going everywhere and then lightning bolts, and it's kind of just satisfying to really destroy things.
Sure.
Another one that I picked up about the same time as I grabbed Soulstone Survivors is Halls of Torment. Halls of Torment kind of has, again, that old school pixel art style of Vampire Survivors. My only complaint about Halls of Torment, and the reason I haven't played this nearly as much, is I just don't think, there's a certain charm to the Vampire Survivors style of the pixel art look.
Sure.
Halls of Torment feels like it really looks like it was made on really old hardware. So again, it's one that I've played, but I haven't played a ton. But a couple other that I have kind of come across in the last little bit. There's one called 20 Minutes Till Dawn. Don't know where it came from in my Steam library. It had been sitting there for a while. I was like, I should check this out. It's fun because it starts off a little bit like a twin stick shooter.
Okay.
So you've got your gun and you've got a point, and then you've got to pull the trigger to shoot. That's what you start off with. But your very first ability is probably going to add you something that automatically now starts firing. And so as it progresses, as it adds more, you're getting things where, honestly, the gun that you start out with, like I just stop using it often at some point, because all of the other things you're getting that are automatically firing do so much more.
Sure.
The 20 minutes till dawn is kind of fun. Again, it's 20 minutes. There is an option for a sped up one that's only 10 minutes. The enemies come faster, move faster, hit harder, but you level up quicker.
Sure.
It's kind of a Lovecraftian vibe to it that I kind of dig. It's still sort of a pixel art, but it's a very, not really monochromatic, but it's kind of all dark grays, a little bit of green and blacks. It's one that I've really I probably started playing this like a week ago because it was sitting in my Steam library and I was like, I should check this out.
Sure.
But I've liked that one. That one's been fun.
Nice.
We talked about Army of Ruin, I think about a month ago or so.
Oh, that was the one that you mentioned that was like really quick.
Yeah. I mean, I think by 10 minutes is when the final boss is going to show up. And that one's been fun because, again, it looks a little bit nicer. It's a little more 3D, isometric, sort of smooth characters, but very, very different sort of, depending on which character you choose, very different initial weapons that you start off with. And then each character has an ability that is on a recharge. And so you get this ability, the rogue character like dashes through things without taking any damage and leaves a little poison bomb behind. The orc character like shoots these spikes out of the ground that pushes everybody around him back. So you kind of have these, again, on a cooldown, these abilities that are recharging. And then probably the most recent one that I have really enjoyed is called Death Must Die. And Death Must Die is got a little bit more of an overarching story. So many of these, it's just, here's your level, go. And this one actually, the idea is that death has, death has basically taken something that is allowing him to run amok. And you are dead, and you've been resurrected by the gods to go and kill death. And so as you run around, as you level up in this game, what happens is different deities will appear to you and offer you a boon. And that's your new weapon or your ability. And so it'll be very different each game depending on which deities randomly appear to you. And they'll have some synergies between the different deities. So you're kind of trying to figure out, okay, now I've seen this one, because once one comes to you, they're going to come to you again. So you're kind of like, okay, I know that this deity is going to come back, and here's what they focus on. And they'll have different focuses. Some of them it's more fire-based weapons, and some of them it's like necromancy type things. And so it's been one of the ones that I've found it has a little bit more depth, I feel, because of that. Mm-hmm. Did you ever play Hades?
It's one of those games that when it hit so big that I was like, I'm good. And I've never played it.
So
it's probably really good.
Hades.
I've heard it's very, very good, but like my Twitter timeline was so like obsessed with it that I was like, it's the same reason why I've never seen the movie Titanic, because everybody loved it and everybody talked about it. And I was like, I'm good. It's just me being contumacious. I'm kind of a dick.
Hey, look, it's the same reason I've never seen Forrest Gump.
You know what? That movie sucks so bad, though, so you're good. You should never watch that movie. That movie's hateful.
Well, I don't ever want to watch it. I figure it's been out this long and I've never seen it, so I have no reason to.
Hateful,
here's what I'd
bad
say.
Boomer apologia that needs to be forgotten forever.
Well, as contrary, and Titanic is a stupid movie too, so you didn't miss anything there. In contrast, though, to these, I would say you should play Hades. Hades is really, really good. I mean, Hades is an incredible game. It is, and it's great characters, and Hades is cool. I bring it up because the way the gods kind of appear to you in Death Must Die, it really feels like they took a little bit of the Vampire Survivors playbook, but then added in this dash of kind of Hades. It reminds me of Hades in that way.
Okay.
And again, Hades is such a good game that anything that kind of doesn't feel derivative, but kind of feels like, yeah, we're taking some cool ideas from this, I'm totally down with. So Death Must Die is probably, if I were to look at any of these I talked about and I was going to say try one, Death Must Die, honestly, would be the one that I would recommend. It is a very cool game. And it is
good
as well, fairly inexpensive. In fact, let's just see.
$6.99.
There you go. So
I only know this because I literally have the Bullet Hell thing still open, and I'm scrolling down this list of Bullet Hell listed games. And first off, there is a bunch of the Bullet Heavens. Secondly, there are so many just like thinly veiled porn games on Steam at this point. It's just embarrassing.
Yeah. Oh, and there's a bunch that aren't even thinly veiled. I was looking through and there was one that was called it was called Hentai Survivors.
Yeah, I just saw Hentai Survivors and I was like, oh, okay, so I understand what we're doing here. And like it's just weird how quickly this just kind of, and clearly like, I think that you're right that a lot of them don't hit as well as Vampire Survivors did or as Death Must Die must hit, because I think that they just get shat out real quick.
Yes.
Because like one of them, I was looking at it, it was called Sundown Survivors, and I mouse over it and the little video starts auto playing and I'm like, that just looks like the Farm Sim Sunhaven. And so I clicked through it, and sure enough, it's made by the Sunhaven people. It's just Sunhaven characters in a Vampire Survivors. And it's like, okay, guys. Okay. Okay. But also, Steam is so bad at this sometimes.
Yes.
Nier Replicant is not a bullet hell game? Why is it listed as a bullet? What?
Because
Nier Automata has like 5 minutes of a 30-hour game that is a bullet hell part. 5 minutes. And so I could see you putting Nier Automata on there.
Well, so here's the thing to remember about these tags. Those tags are user generated.
Well, the users, as so often, the audience is mid.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Be better, audience. It's not bullet hell.
No.
Affecting RPG? Yes. Bullet hell? No.
I would recommend, again, if you were to try out any one of these I talked about, Death Must Die would be the one I would recommend.
I'll
Army
keep
of
that in
Ruin
mind.
is the next one. Those are Vampire Survivors, Army of Ruin, and Death Must Die are the three that I have enjoyed the most. But like I say, it's an interesting little, and this is one of the things we see, especially now with the easily accessible game engines that are available, some of them for free. And it's to a point where the only investment to make a game is going to be your time. You can do it, all the tools to make a game like this can be found and used for free. And so it has allowed this proliferation for good or ill. But, we see this a lot in games these days where something hits and it's really easy for other things to kind of jump on it and ride along with it. And I'm kind of a contrarian as well. So a lot of times I'll avoid those sorts of things. But this one has clicked with me. What were you going to say?
Well, it's just, I feel like that's more and more common and maybe I'm full of shit, probably. This has probably been how video games has always been. But I feel like I'm noticing it more the last few years because, like, Battlegrounds comes out and everyone freaks out and it's like, oh, this Arma mod got turned into a whole game and people like it. I guess we need to make our own battle royale. So suddenly every shooter was a battle royale shooter. And for better or for ill, sorry to the 7 people that liked original Fortnite mode Fortnite, but that's not what that game's about anymore. Now it's to the point where nobody even plays build mode in Fortnite anymore. Everyone plays no build. So like the actual fort part of Fortnite has disappeared entirely. Or, the same sort of thing I feel like happened with when Among Us got really big, during the pandemic. And then suddenly every single game had to be like, we're going to add like a mafia mode or like a secret mode like that. And it's just like, you could also just do your own thing, guys.
Yeah.
It's okay. I promise you can.
Yeah, I think you're right, though. I mean, I'm sure to some degree this has always been there. But again, I think that the tools to make these games to some degree have been democratized to the point that it is a lot easier for people to do that. And so it leads to this rampant bandwagon jumping that happens. And again, like I say, that can be fun, but it also leads to things like, again, I was trying to just look for examples of this. And again, the page I found was 563 things that this website was saying were similar to Vampire Survivors. That's a lot of games.
That's a lot of games. The part that I think is the funniest and what makes this, as much as I recognize that when they are good, they are good. And to be fair, the ones that you mentioned really liking are not doing this. So many of these things are getting shit out there and then immediately being called something survivors. So that when you're searching for Vampire Survivors, then, suddenly Hentai Survivors shows up or Crafty Survivors or
Zombie Survivors.
Gunsuit Survivors. There's a fucking Pathfinder one of these.
I saw
Pathfinder Gallows Spear Survivors. And so, like, honestly, I'm surprised that Pathfinder beat D&D to the punch, to be perfectly honest. There's probably a Warhammer. There's probably 7 Warhammer ones with the ease with which the Warhammer folks will sell the rights to their games. There's probably 7 of them. But, like, I just think that it feels like a lot of them are just a little like mercenary, for lack of a better way to describe it, in the way that they are, trying to explicitly invoke and evoke Vampire Survivors to be like, look, do you want to pay $3 for Choo Choo Survivor where it's Vampire Survivors, but you're a train? And you're like, I mean, I guess I $3 want to try Choo Choo Survivor.
I mean,
because I bet people have.
It, but now I kind of want to try it.
It literally just showed up when I refreshed the bullet hell page. It looks very silly. It's Vampire Survivors, but you're on a train track and you're a train.
There you go.
Why not?
There you go. Well, like I say, I enjoy these. I think they're great for playing on the Steam Deck, anything like that. But as with anything, I do think that it's going to reach a point. It's going to reach a breaking point where it's too much and people are like, okay, we're done with this. And we all know how fickle people are. People are going to move on to something else.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting to me to see what hits and what hits hard. And I think, like, as you said, a lot of times the right person just needs to start streaming it, whether it's on YouTube or on Twitch or whatever. And then it can, for almost inexplicable reasons at times, just become a runaway. And we'll see what the next one is.
And then there are 17 Five Nights at Freddy's games and a movie.
Uh-huh.
And 3 other movies that came out first that are basically Five Nights at Freddy's spec scripts that then they decided not to go with. So they were like, well, let's file the serial numbers off and put this crap out. And that's the thing, is like the wheel, streaming. Like the worm turns. Nobody gives a shit about Five Nights at Freddy's anymore. Nope. That's over. By the time that movie came out, it was over for most people. Like, some people thought back on it fondly. And those are the few, like 6 people that went and saw Five Nights at Freddy's, because it did not do that good. Because they didn't strike when the iron was hot. And like, I wonder if we've maybe already made that turn and we just haven't noticed it yet with the Survivors style game, where like there's too many, they're everywhere, and it's kind of over now.
Yeah. It will be interesting.
We've hit like critical mass, and none of them are going to come out and like have that critical or sales success, because it's just the market is too flooded. I don't know if we're there or not, but we might be.
I think we're getting close. So
I will say, the last thing I'll say is, I was looking at all those bullet hell games, and I saw that in that list of bullet hell games was Mother Gunship, and I remembered how cool Mother Gunship is, and I was like, maybe I should go back and play Mother Gunship. Did you ever play that? It's fun.
I don't think I did.
Do you want to play a first-person bullet hell game? It's wild. What if it's a bullet hell game, but you are in a mech, and it is first person in a mech? So you got 4 guns, 5 guns going at once, and it's wild. And you just got to like run. It's a pretty cool game. Mother Gunship is pretty cool.
So I had this thing in the back of my head, and I had to look it up. And I, as you'd mentioned this, and you were talking about Five Nights at Freddy's, I did remember an animated Vampire Survivors television series was announced in April 2023. No
I can't
word
imagine
on where that sits, but yeah, I was like, I swear I remember there was something that was announced along those lines. And I think you're right. It's going to be too late.
What could you possibly do? They already made it. It's called Castlevania. It's 4 seasons in on Netflix. It's fine, apparently. Apparently the new one is very gay. But like, that ship has sailed, buddies. What are you gonna vampires? It's Castlevania, except you're the one shooting.
Yep. It will be interesting to see what happens.
It will be.
Well, until we find out what happens with these games and how badly the Vampire Survivors animated series either dies or, in my opinion, most likely never actually makes it to be released.
I'm calling my shot. That's never coming out.
Yeah, I don't think so. But until any of that happens and we can circle back around, we'll go ahead and call it quits tonight and look forward to talking about, fingers crossed, I can make it and see Godzilla -1 this coming week when I'm no longer on call. And until then, people are welcome to reach out to us at feedback@themiddleofculture.com. Go ahead and subscribe, share, leave a review, 5-star rating, all those good things. And we'll plan to talk again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, talk to you later, folks.